I'd like to welcome Chuck Wild to Jannie Broadcast. Hello, Chuck. Welcome.
Hello, Jenny. I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's
Appreciate it.
it's wonderful to have you here today because you are best known for your series Liquid Mind, which is therapeutic music, very sedative, ambient type of music. And of course, you've actually recorded I think it's more than 18 albums, haven't you, in that particular series? And of
Yeah.
course, you're just about to release your next album, aren't you? Or is that released now?
It just got released, actually. The album is called Liquid Mind 15. That's because it's the 15th studio album, but I also have four other albums. Liquid Mind 15 in the Love. So we chose to release that on Valentine's Day, St.
Oh,
Valentine's Day. So it was a few days ago. Yep.
yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, Chuck, you have obviously you've got some amazing experience in the music business, but I really want to talk about how you developed, obviously, the love for this type of music. Now, I know that it all started when you were going through a really quite tough time yourself. You were having panic attacks, you were having lots of issues at the time. And of course, there was a lot going on in your life at the time, wasn't there? You'd lost quite a number of friends and family from the AIDS virus, and you were going through a lot. So tell me how you progressed to this type of music.
Well, yes, you're right, Jannie. I was working on the Max Headroom television series, which was started in Britain by a fellow by the name of Peter Wagg, and Peter moved the show to Los Angeles. So I started. I was a staff songwriter at Warner Chappell Music. Uh, but actually, back then it was called Lorimar Music. And they were the producer of the Max Headroom show. And they
Mhm.
said, would you like to work on the Max show? It's won an Emmy. It's a great show. And I said, sure. Are you kidding? So Michael Hoenig and Michael from Tangerine Dream, a wonderful composer and synthesist, um, we were co-composers on the Max show. But as things often happen in the TV industry, they got really far behind schedule. And at one point, we only had really a couple of days to compose, arrange, record, and mix 43 minutes of music.
Oh my goodness.
That's a lot. I
It
mean,
is.
even today,
Yeah.
uh, with all the tools we have them, but that back then we didn't have that many tools. So basically, I didn't sleep for 3 months. The
Oh,
network courier would be standing outside the door waiting for us to finish a piece and then rush it up to the mixing place in Hollywood. We were working downtown in Michael's loft, basically. And I got about 4 hours sleep a night. And I started getting very anxious, and I didn't really know what anxiety was. We were at a spotting session, and Peter Wegg, I started hyperventilating, like, and Peter Wagg thought I was maybe having a heart attack. So he said, we're not waiting for the ambulance, Chuck. He dragged me into his Porsche, drove 100 miles an hour
oh my
down
goodness.
the boulevard and went to the nearest urgency clinic. And he said, I think my friend's having a heart attack. Can you have a look at him? And they looked at me, they rushed me in, and everyone did a bunch of tests. And the doctor came back and he said, the good news is you're not having a heart attack. He said, you're having what's called an anxiety attack. And I said, what is that? I truly didn't know. I had been in the Navy when I was 20 years old. in the Vietnam conflict
Mm.
and overseas, right off the coast there, never got anxious. Airplanes that dropped bombs on our ship, never got anxious. But the anxiety, and panic attacks kind of caught hold.
Mm.
And as I started to get some counseling about it, I realized that the fact that 65 of my friends had passed on from AIDS, and it was a very difficult time. Even some of the parents refused to allow their sons' friends to go to the services for them. It was a very, very stressful and difficult time. And in January of in November actually, 1988, Max Headroom's show was canceled. And we were really upset, but it was the most expensive show on television. So I guess they just decided it wasn't quite worth the advertising revenue they were getting. And, and in December, I just still wasn't feeling right. In January, I started a friend of mine, a wonderful composer by the name of Jeff Kingfisher. I think he goes under J.S. Kingfisher. And Jeff suggested that I go, that I consider counseling.
Mm.
And he also said, have you tried acupuncture? And I said, no. I did a little bit of research and I started undergoing acupuncture with Mao Xingni and his brother Dao Xingni. They are 38th generation Chinese Taoist masters.
Yeah.
And their father was still alive at the time, and they were like more my age. So they gave me acupuncture 5 days a week
Wow.
for several months. And I took Chinese herbs for almost a year. Dow said to me, he said, Chuck, you almost killed yourself. You cannot work those hours. And at the same time, I went to see the counselor. Her name was Susan. I don't recall the last name. And Susan said to me, Chuck, you're a composer. Why don't you create the kind of music that represents the way you'd like to feel, not the way you feel right now? I said, I don't know if I can do that. And she said, well, I don't want you to come back to me until you can play. Excuse me. Until you can bring me a cassette with some of that music. So I went home and I started, experimenting, and everything I wrote was really fast. It was like, excuse me, a little water. Everything I wrote was really fast. And I had sent it to some friends of mine, Dirk Pearson and Sandy Shaw. I had met them in New York when I was touring with Missing Persons, and Dirk and Sandy wrote a book called Life Extension. And because I was so sick, I had agoraphobia. I wouldn't even leave my house.
Oh my goodness.
It was crazy. And I would send them the music and stuff, and they'd say, this isn't really relaxing, Chuck, but keep trying. And finally, one day, I was just sitting there, and the Nee brothers had taught me some meditation, like a color meditation, where you just close your eyes, you breathe in, you think of a color, and the five main colors relate to certain parts of your body. And one day I was meditating and I remembered when I was a kid, I started playing piano when I was 4 years old. I actually started because I was crippled at the time. I had something called Perthes hip. I kept falling down, and the doctor said, you need to be off your feet for a year.
Oh.
Tell that to a 4-year-old. But what my parents did very creatively, they had a gal working for us that knew how to play piano, and she would
Oh,
carry
wow.
piano every day. And then when we would go to church every Sunday, I'd say, Mommy, can I sit behind the organist? I want to watch. It had 5 keyboards. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's much bigger than our piano. And so I sat there. Her name was Gladys Hamilton Combs, a very sweet gal. And this was in 1950, a long time ago. I'm 78 years old, so it was quite some time ago. And Gladys said, sure, you can sit next to me here. And maybe one day you'll play organ. And sure enough, about 6 or 7 years later, she let me play the organ.
Wow.
Eventually, when I was a teenager, I was playing for the youth services. And she said, um, when they're doing meditation, I just want you to hold a chord. That's it. And I remember that, all of that one day in that meditation, I'm sitting there and I'm going, oh my gosh, there's that meditational music. And I could do that. And so I held a chord. And at the time, I had a dog who was actually blind. She kept bumping into things. I had foam all over the house, and her name was Love Dog. And the minute I started holding a chord and just sort of barely moving it, Love Dog came over and fell asleep at my feet. And I went, what? No. Usually she'd be like moving around when I was doing the pop music and doing the songwriting and some film composing. But this time she just fell asleep, and I thought, hmm. And I did the first piece. It was called 0 Degrees 0. That was 1988. And I entitled it 0 Degrees 0 because that's the way I felt. I thought, wow, am I ever going to be able to leave my house again? You know, everything frightens me. I just am
Mm.
so anxious, and I didn't understand what it was.
Yeah.
I finally got in therapy for a number of years. and and I did that piece and I took it over to Susan, the counselor, and she said, this is great. The piece was 28, 29 minutes long. It ended up being on my first album, but I didn't really have the money because I had spent all the money I made on Max Headroom, spent it on healthcare. So I did not really have the money to start a label, but my assistant and I made hundreds of cassettes and we took them around to the AIDS hospice. One of my cousins had cancer at the time. We took one to her,
Mm.
started just handing it out to people.
Mm.
And one day, about that went on for 3 or 4 years, even a little longer. In 1993,
Mm.
I had made more pieces. And I said, you know, I want to put out an album, but I have no clue how to do it. And there was this store called Only New Age Music on Melrose Boulevard in Hollywood, in West Hollywood. And uh, I went to the owner and I said, you know, I want to put out new age music, but I don't know how to do it. And she said, well, let's have a meeting. Her name was Suzanne Doucet. She's kind of known as the mother, the godmother of new age music.
Yeah.
Suzanne is still active, and she puts out her own music. And we got together and she gave me the news that she said, you know, it's going to cost you like $150,000 to
Oof.
really, you have to start your own label. And remember, there's no internet. You can record an album for $100 now and put it online for free. She said, you'll need to go to all the stores. You know, she said there's about 300 of them. Um, I don't know exactly, but I remember thinking, how am I going to do this? And I went and sat in my living room and meditated. The
Wow.
next day, I just sat there for like 2 hours, I think, 1 or 2 hours. I do this counting meditation where I just breathe in, I envision the number one, and I breathe out.
Yeah.
And I do that up to 10 and do it. It's very, very simple, just clearing meditation. And as I was doing that, the phone rang, and it was my dear friend and mentor, the late Bruce Swedien.
Yeah.
Bruce was a 5-time Grammy winner for his work with Michael Jackson. And, Bruce did Thriller and just
Yeah.
about everything. And he's worked with so many artists. He worked with Quincy Jones for 40 years, and
Wow.
he produced one of the Missing Persons albums in 1984. So
Mm.
we became friends. And he called me, he said, "Chuck, what are you doing?" And my initial thought was to say, "Oh, I'm incredibly busy," which I was. But I didn't say that. I said, "Bruce, I'm working with you." I remember the exact words to this day. And he said, "I'm working with the glove, and he needs someone to make sounds that the human ear has never heard.
Wow.
Are you interested?" And I knew that the glove was Michael Jackson. And I said, "Sure." I said, "I need something called a synclavier, uh, which incidentally was a musical instrument that cost
Oh.
$250,000. And he said, "It'll be there tomorrow." And I said, "I need a little help work, learning how to work and so forth, but I'll use that, and I'll hire a bunch of people to go out and take samples." This was just the beginning of computer music. Well, there was computer music, but it was mostly analog.
Mhm.
So it was kind of the beginning of sampling and doing, really stretching the limits sound wise. And he said, "Great, I'll have Martin Royer come over and teach you." Martin was like the synclavier expert in the
Wow.
world, or at least in my part of the world. And he came over and tutored me for 2 weeks. And that led to 4 years of making sounds for Michael, doing some drum programming and things. Michael had a lot of people working for him on the History album, I think
Mm.
200 folks. So I was just one person, but I did get to meet with him every single day. Uh,
Wow.
After the earthquake, they went to New York, but they eventually came back.
Mm.
And I made just about exactly that much money that Suzanne had mentioned to me.
Oh, wow.
I think over 4 years, because Michael didn't work constantly, but I made enough money to start my own label.
Mm.
And that's how Liquid Mind came into being.
Absolutely incredible. And of course, lots of people are, affected by your music. Millions of people listen to your albums, and they get great strength out of listening to it and obviously meditating to it. But you mentioned very briefly there about your pet loving the music that you did and sat at your feet and just went to sleep. I put music on, relaxing music for my ragdoll cat when I go out, just to
Mm,
keep her just calm and everything. She doesn't, and she has a lovely nature, you know. So it's not
mm.
just about humans. We can also affect our pets by music as well, which is absolutely incredible. No,
Absolutely.
no, I
I
mean,
have a
stood.
12-hour pet video on the Liquid Mind channel at YouTube,
Mm.
just soothing music for 12 hours.
Amazing. Amazing. It is incredible, though, isn't it? But I mean, studies do show that the use of music interventions can create a significant improvement to the mental health and also your physical health as well. And I think it's really important, isn't it, for people to remember that because life is so busy, isn't it? Constantly, life is really busy. Everyone just goes to work, rushes around, has family, does everything that they need to do. And a lot of people fail to think about themselves. And I think
Mm,
people
I
need to
agree.
take time for them, because music therapy can shift that negativity, and it can release the relaxation and also aid rehabilitation as well, which is absolutely incredible. It's such a strong, powerful tool, don't you think?
It is absolutely. I was so lucky that one of the first things I did, just by luck, somebody told me about a thing called music therapy,
Mm,
and the internet was kind of in existence. There wasn't music streaming on the internet, but it was there.
mm,
And I did a little bit of research. I found about an organization called the American Music Therapy Association.
mm,
And I actually flew to Washington, D.C., where their headquarters were in Maryland, actually, right
mm.
outside of D.C.
Yeah.
And I met with them, and I met a gal who was the senior research assistant. Her name was Barbara Els. She was a flautist. She ended up playing on some of my albums, actually, just very quiet flute notes. And she explained to me the concept of entrainment.
Mm,
She said, whatever we listen to, it's been proven over and over in research, our body will involuntarily entrain to it. You start playing something with a beat, and your body will entrain.
mm,
So I always remember that. And she said, there are kind of two kinds of music, sedative music and stimulative music. She said, most music is stimulative. If you want to do sedative music, Chuck, you need to not have an arousal response sonically in
yeah.
the music. You
Mm,
don't want anything to attract attention.
mm,
And that was about 1996. So I started on the path of mellowing out the music even more and more. And it was just very helpful to me. I would manufacture CDs. At first it was cassettes, then CDs, and I would send them to everyone who belonged to the American Music Therapy
mm,
Association.
mm.
I dabbled a little bit in stimulative music. I'm trying to remember. It's called gait training music.
Oh,
And
right.
Barbara had
Okay.
mentioned to me
Is
that,
that the tick? Is that the tick?
yes,
Ah, right.
exactly.
Okay.
And if someone has had a stroke and they can't walk,
Yeah.
if you put on something that has
A tick.
a regular tick, they will almost involuntarily start moving. And
Amazing.
so I did a series of gait training music, starting at a very low tempo, around 60 beats per minute,
Mm.
and going up, I think, to 140 in four different styles. And I gave it to the AMTA, and they give it out to people.
Oh, wow.
So
That's
gait
incredible.
training, you're exactly right. So I've kind of done both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, and of course, in the case of Alzheimer's as well, Alzheimer's sufferers, that music can reignite parts of the brain that may have been dormant for a while and can bring back many memories. And people who don't vocalize how they feel because of the condition can then go right back to a memory and sing the incredible songs that they knew about when they were teenagers and
Yes,
and loved, and they can sing it. It's such an incredible tool, isn't it? I just think it's just amazing. I mean, the way it can allow the brain to recall that memory is just
very powerful.
very powerful.
Unreal.
Absolutely. I mean,
It's,
what's your view on it in terms of with Alzheimer's sufferers, Chuck?
I don't have any experience with that, except my dad my mom never had much memory loss. My dad did when he was in his 90s.
Yeah.
We would play music for him. I bought a bunch of, music that he loved, that he grew
Mm,
up with, all the Frank Sinatra,
yeah.
everything. And he would sit there and sing along with them.
Yeah.
So, and he was, um, you know, it, it just helped him to remain functional
Yeah.
and to enjoy life. And one of the things that I did, my mom and dad stayed in Kansas City, and I was living in LA and running my own little label at the time. So every 4 to 6 weeks, I was flying back to Kansas City because they were in their 90s and I wanted to be there. So I'd spend a few weeks in Kansas City, then fly home to Hollywood, and then fly back. And during that period of time, every night when I was there, I would go out in the living room and play piano for all
Oh,
the folks in their retirement community.
that's lovely.
And it was a lot of fun, I will
Yeah.
tell you, just to see people, get up out of their wheelchairs and
Yeah.
do this and clap their hands. And I was just playing songs I knew when I grew up. I hardly remember them now, but things like Heart and Soul, da, 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 da. Just songs that were like easy sing-along songs, some of which I learned when my caregiver as a child would carry me to the piano and she taught me how to play. She
Yeah,
said, "Your legs
amazing.
aren't working right now, Chucky, but your hands work fine."
And thank goodness that she did that, Chuck, because that was the beginning
Exactly.
of
Yeah.
your music career, wasn't it, going
It,
forward?
it, it really
It,
was. Her name was Edna Amos. I've
oh,
always remembered.
yeah,
Been grateful to her and to the gal, all my music teachers. I started studying as soon as I could walk. I think
yeah.
I started piano lessons at 6 or something.
Mm. That's incredible, isn't it? I mean, what a story. And of course, then you've gone on to work with some incredible artists.
Mhm.
Michael Jackson, which you just mentioned, absolutely incredible. Paula Abdul, Jennifer Rush. I think that you had part in one of her albums as
I
well.
Yeah, I wrote a song with a late friend of mine. Her name was Marti Sharron, and Marty wrote "Jump for Your Love" for the Pointer Sisters and some other
Yeah,
things. And she was amazing. And a friend of mine who owned a music studio and was co-wrote "Jump for Your Love" for the Pointers. His name's Gary Scardina. He
yeah,
introduced me to Marty. And he said, "You guys should write some songs together." And I said, "Okay, let's do it." And that's actually what led to my getting a deal at Lorimar Warner
yeah.
Brothers. Um, and I was just driving one day, driving down to see a friend in Orange County, and I just started singing, "You're my one and only, you're my one and only," with somebody I was in love with. uh, I just started singing that. And so when I got back, I said, "Marty, I have this idea. Can you listen to this cassette?" And she said, "I think that's the number one song." And I went, "Well, I don't know, but let's write it anyway." We won't overanalyze it. We'll just write the song. It's called "You're My One and Only." And Jennifer Rush recorded it. And in Europe, it became number one in Germany for
Yeah,
quite some time.
yeah.
Um, Never quite made it in the United States.
Mm.
Jennifer wasn't on I don't know, I loved her voice. It was
Oh,
amazing.
she was amazing. Yeah,
She wasn't on the pop charts here that much, but
no.
so I was very grateful for that. And yeah, just I love songwriting. It's a bit difficult to make a living in songwriting in any
Yeah.
kind of music these days. There's a challenge from AI generative music,
Mm,
and I feel that in the ambient area that I'm in.
mm.
And a lot of people do. I've been reading a lot about it, and it's a challenge, but
I
you
think it's
know,
also hard as well for up and coming artists as well,
mm,
vocal artists, because on Spotify, if they put some music out on Spotify, they're only getting pennies really for all the effort that they put in. They're literally getting pennies of it back, and there's not an awful lot to live up to really in terms of, how do they live? Um how can they manage on that type of a money
Right.
coming in, you know? And I think a lot of artists, up and coming artists, have other work, other jobs as well to sort of keep them going. I mean, I've worked with a lot of artists who are up and coming, and it's a struggle, you know, unless they get, you know, performances on stage, you know, selling music online is very difficult because there's always the middleman taking a big cut. And I think it's become
Right.
more difficult, hasn't it, now, in the music business, to be able to make a good living out of it. And I know songwriters do struggle, as well. So it is difficult. And I think AI is going to affect that even more because
Mhm.
obviously the music has changed, hasn't it? But
Yes. There are options. When you were describing that, it actually took me back to
mm,
that exact period in my life when I was
mm,
just struggling to get going in music.
yeah.
And I started out learning how to type. And I could type back then anyway, I could type 80 words a minute.
Mm,
So I went to I got a job at a company that was a musical import-export company called European Crafts. I think they're still around. And I got a job there, and that was my quote day job.
mm,
And um, the owner of the company, because he sold musical instruments, he was very encouraging
mm.
to me. And he said, if you want to come in early and leave early, that would give you time to audition for bands and
Yeah.
stuff. And I thought, oh, that's a good idea. And so I did that. I used to go in at 7:30 or 8 in the morning. I'd leave at 3, not take a lunch hour, just kind of a snack, and then I would go audition for bands.
Wow.
I auditioned for over 100 bands after I got into Hollywood, and none of them really resonated for me until the band Missing Persons.
Mm,
They all the other folks in the band were working with Frank Zappa, and they just were writing great songs. Terry Bozzio, Warren Cuccurullo, and Terry's wife, Dale Bozzio, who
yeah.
is still performing.
Wow.
Bless her heart. I see that she's got a concert coming up next with says Missing Persons Feeling, featuring Dale Bozzio.
Mm,
Anyway, one thing led to another. That's what I would share with younger musicians, that um, being in that band, um, I made a living at it. It enabled me to meet other people, and I met Bruce Swedien,
mm,
and I started doing studio work because I was in the band, and that introduced me to Marti Sharron, who introduced me to Lorimar, which became Warner Brothers, and which then led to Liquid Mind and so forth, and doing what I wanted to do. I had about maybe 100 songs used in TV shows and
wow.
films, and maybe 25 or 30 songs recorded. That's nothing compared to Diane Warren and people like that. But
Yeah.
at the time, I was able to make a living. I was on the road before I came to Hollywood. Um, I don't know if you remember an artist named Edgar Winter.
Vaguely,
Incredibly,
yes, I
Edgar
do.
and his brother Johnny Winter. Yeah, incredibly talented artist. And I read an interview with him, and he said, if you truly want to be in music, go on the road, learn your craft. So I went on the road for 7 years
Yeah.
before I came to Hollywood. Far too long because I liked it. It was really fun. But then I realized, ooh, I'm in my 30s. I think it's time, to go to New York or Hollywood. I lived in New York. It was
Mm,
too expensive.
mm,
And I looked up cost of living in Los Angeles, and it was much cheaper back then. I can't
mm.
say so now. Um, so that's kind of the route. I played in all kinds of bands. If I was out of work, I would go to one of those temporary work places and say, I can type really fast.
Yeah.
Is there a temp job? They call them temp agencies,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think.
I think they still call them
And
that now. They do.
yeah, Yeah, so I would do that whatever I needed to. There was one year when I was living in North Carolina, I slept in my truck with my equipment.
Oh my
I had a
goodness.
pillow on the, I had a pipe, not a pipe organ, a Hammond organ,
Yeah.
and that had like a pedal board. And I would put yeah, I had a really big van until some really beautiful friends of mine in North Carolina said, "You all can stay in our house, your band." We have a house on our farm that's no one's staying in, so we
Yeah.
moved.
Oh, how lovely. How
Yeah.
lovely. So, I mean, what advice would you give then to up and coming artists who do struggle to get on, you know? What advice would you give to them artists?
It really depends on what their goal is, but
Yeah.
I would say definitely have a day job to start out with. Um, Meditation helps me to have perspective.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not, doesn't solve every problem in the world, but when I'm, distracted by everything that is going on in our society today, I can meditate and it just kind of clears my mind. So I would suggest that have a day job so you have a stream of income. It can be I waited tables for a while
Mm.
when people found out I could play piano and I would play Happy Birthday. There was a piano in the restaurant. I'd get big tips and I could afford to do that. So I'd say that have a day job, meditate a bit, and then find a band and go on the road.
Yeah.
There are bands all the time. I played in, I think I counted once, 20 bands
Wow.
where I came to Hollywood. And they're called top 40 bands.
Mm,
What a gift it was for me to learn.
mm,
Eventually I became a staff songwriter. So for me to learn
mm.
these songs, because a top 40 band listens to the radio
Yeah.
and learns maybe 20 or 30 of the top 40 songs.
Mm.
So go on the road and just, you'll learn by doing
Yeah.
that. And then as time goes on, of course, you want to do your own original music.
Mm.
And so be in an original band. And I did that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Amazing.
and that eventually, it's just one step at a time, I would say. I
Yeah.
think that's the thing. Just
Yeah, it's just
take it
having that
one step at a time.
determination, isn't it? Determination. And as you say, you know, you've got to have that perspective. And you just touched on there about, you know, the way the world is at the moment. You know, it's quite
Mm.
concerning. There's lots of things going on in the world that concerns, you know, a lot of people. There's a lot of unrest, isn't there? Everywhere. It really, you switch on the
Yeah.
news and there's always something. And you know, music is a great healer. And wouldn't it be lovely to think that that music could have an effect on the whole world? And I think, you know, I mean, I think I read or I listened to an interview that you did where you were sending your CDs out to politicians. You know,
I we just did that last week
did
with the
you?
new album In the Love. Yeah, In the Love basically the theme of the new album is that we can all find ways to express and receive love in our
Yeah.
lives.
Mm,
And there are millions of ways to do that, or
mm.
well, at least thousands. And there's no excuse for feeling deprived of that. And for some years, I send every album to every member of the United States Supreme Court, every member of the United States House of Representatives,
Wow.
senator. There are two in each state, so 100 of those, and to the 50 state governors.
Mm.
I just send them an album. I don't usually hear back. I did hear back from Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She wrote me a very nice note when I sent her. Ooh, it was some time ago when she was alive, and and she said, "Thank you so much." Anton Kennedy, who was also a Supreme Court justice with her, said, "I listen to your music every weekend. Thank you."
Oh,
But I don't listen when I work, but I listen every weekend.
mm.
That, even if I can only help a couple of people that bear a lot of responsibility,
Mm,
our society and our government, I'm glad to do that. Right
mm,
now, we're doing a mailing to about 2,000 people, not CDs. I'm shifting over to something more environmentally friendly, which is a QR code card
yeah.
to download the album. But we're sending that out to firemen, policemen, healthcare workers, veterinary facilities, on and on. I don't remember them all, but we're doing a lot of mailings right now.
Mm,
So it's just trying to all my albums have always been for free on YouTube in
mm,
full album format. You can just go to YouTube and say Liquid Mind and
mm.
see different albums. And
Yeah,
um,
amazing.
it's been important to make the music available for free. Not everyone can afford the monthly
Mm,
streaming. Uh,
yeah. I mean,
so
that music, I mean, it does affect millions of people. Millions of people listen to your albums, and it does have a huge effect on people. And as you say, meditation, that is the way to go. And I think more and more people are learning about the benefits of meditation. And I think that really, really helps to have that music to be able to really lose yourself in. Do you know what I mean? You completely relaxed and lose yourself in, really, and it just gives you that ability to get that perspective, doesn't it, to be able to think more positively and to put everything in a box. I always think to myself, all the negative feelings sometimes, that sort of come in your life every day. You've got influences from the news, from all different things that you're hearing every day. And sometimes it's nice to be able to go to bed of a night, put a meditation on, just relax and take that negativity and almost in your mind's eye, put it into a box and then
mm,
send that box out to the universe and then just work on yourself. And I think that is really important, and if everybody did that, I think the world would be just an amazing place. I mean, it is a wonderful place, but it just concerns me about, all the hardship people go through and all the negativity in the world at the moment. And
yes, I
it's not
agree.
only in the UK, it's in the US, it's in Europe, it's everywhere, isn't it? And it's so difficult for people to forget themselves, forget about, the importance of life.
Yeah.
And I think this really puts things in perspective and allows you to be able to think clearly. If you're meditating, you get rid of all the negativity, and that just allows you to focus on what you're doing and the positive things in life. And I think sometimes there's a failing in that, because I think if lots of people listened to music like this, people would be different towards each other, you know um,
Mm.
and it is quite worrying sometimes, and I think this type of music will really help, and it needs to be pushed out to as many people as possible. And it's absolutely incredible. You started from being a young child with your own disability, and then learning to play the piano as part of your rehabilitation. And then from then on, you've then created this wonderful career working with some incredible people. And I just think it's most incredible the way you've just been so focused, and that really really helps. And these albums of yours are just incredible, and I wish you lots of luck with
Thank
them,
you.
because I agree with you. I meditate myself. I'm a Reiki master, and
Oh, oh my.
I do. I use this type of music to practice with, And it's really incredible, and it really allows the person to really relax. Um, and that can only be positive.
I agree. I
Absolutely.
think, you know, the thought that comes to mind for me is that um, inner peace, can lead to world peace. World peace begins with inner peace in a way.
Mm.
If we can quiet our minds just a bit, it's not, becoming a zombie or anything.
No,
You know, I've, I've heard a lot of strange things, um, but it's just, um, you know, whatever we can do. I'm amazed by how people use my music. A lot of students, I
yeah.
listen to your music. The music is designed to be played very quietly, by the way, and
Mhm.
please never drive or operate equipment with it.
No,
Uh, it does make you a little bit drowsy, but most people just quietly in the background, it helps them to focus on whatever is, you know,
that's true.
in
Yeah,
focus right now. It's used in healthcare, in so many different situations, yoga, massage, all the obvious, hospice care,
yeah.
palliative care, sleep disorder clinics.
Mm,
Uh, One thing I would say about sleeping, I don't suggest people sleep to my music,
mm,
but I do suggest they use it as a pre-sleep.
yeah. Just to
The
calm the mind.
Exactly. Dr. William Dement, the late Dr. William Dement, founded the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, and he liked my music, and he allowed us to have a quote, and that the music being used as part of a pre-sleep regimen would
Amazing.
be very, very useful. So my suggestion is, there's sleep tips on the liquidmindmusic.com website, but my suggestion is listen to it quietly for 30 minutes just to help you disconnect before going to bed. I sometimes work very long hours, longer than I should, than I could. But um, when I just put a bit of music on very quietly, a little Liquid Mind in the background, I just go, oh, yes, it's that entrainment. My body starts entraining the
Mm,
music therapy.
yeah. It's incredible, isn't it? The power of music. It
It,
really is. It is. It's just incredible, And I mean, I will be sharing this podcast with lots of people, lots of therapists, lots of yoga instructors, lots of Reiki practitioners, and I will share this podcast with lots of people that are connected, and I will. I think it's just incredible that, as you say, if more people listen to this type of music and we're able to heal the mind, then that would bring peace
I agree.
to the world.
Keep that thought.
Absolutely, absolutely. It would bring peace to the world. And on that thought, Chuck, I'd like to thank you so much for today. It's been wonderful to talk to you.
Well, thank you, Jannie. Thank
It's
you.
been wonderful to talk to you, and I will be sharing your album everywhere.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for the good work you do.
Oh,
Uh,
it's like yourself. You do something that you love, and I absolutely love what I do. I really do. And I think when you love something so much, it makes all the difference, doesn't it?
it does. I wake up every day, even when there's tough times, I wake up with a smile on my face.
Yeah.
It-
Yeah.
I'm doing what I love, trying to help others,
Mm.
trying to be of service in the world, just like you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Chuck. Before we go, do you just want to give your details of your website out again, where people
Oh,
can get the albums?
sure. It's liquidmindmusic.com. And you can go to that website and you have all kinds of options. You can download free. I have like an hour's worth of free MP3s you can download. You can click on YouTube where I have 30 or 40 videos with
Mm.
Liquid Mind and a lot of fan videos. I think there's 200 fan videos that other people made.
Yeah.
And there's also a link, a little button called streaming. And you can go to,
Ah,
it gives you links directly to the streaming services if you're so inclined to listen that way. So there's
wonderful.
lots of ways to listen. And
Fantastic.
that's it.
Thank you so much, Chuck, for your time today.
Thank
And
you.
I will surely be sharing your albums with everyone. So thank you
Cool.
so much.
Thank you. Take
Thank
care.
you. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.